Good evening and welcome to Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Luv Bay family, we are continuing to rise out of the ashes together. Our topic on this evening is the DART program of Laurel House and also the Power and Control Wheel. Our co-host tonight is Jennifer Peterkin, and we have with us our guest, Deidre Donaldson of Laurel House. Listeners, if you have any questions or comments for our guest or our co-host, you can email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. If you have resources that you would like to share with us on a national or local level from your country, your community, your local organizations, or your faith community, you can also email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. And with that, Jen, if you would greet our listeners for tonight.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. So happy to be here in 2023, our first show of the year. My name is Jennifer Peterkin. I'm one of the co-hosts on Suffering in Silence. I am a survivor of domestic violence, and so I do advocacy work within my community. It has been such a cathartic thing for me personally as I walk my healing journey from my own experiences. Currently, I am working on a project called The Human Experience, set to launch this month, which is a podcast about how what we go through in our lives affects who we are and informs what we feel about the world and other people. So if you want to stay updated on that, feel free to follow me on Instagram at GetTheHX.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen. Deidre, would you please introduce yourself to our Luv Bay listeners on tonight?
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Deidre Donaldson. I am an advocate at Laurel House with the DART department. I've been at Laurel House a little over a year and a half. Some other things I do in addition to that is I work at a juvenile detention center. I'm currently in school for my master's in forensic psych. And I'm happy to finally be here. It's been a while, and we've been trying to get here, but we're here now.
Yes, thank you so much. With Luv Bay, we really have been trying to get here for a minute with Deidre. So
yeah.
I am glad that you are here with us. Can you please share the information for Laurel House with our listeners so they'll know?
Yes. So Laurel House's 24-hour hotline number for the DART department is 215-852-9826. If you go to www.laurelhouse.org, you'll find our website. You'll find our shelter information in addition to our counseling information and all those other resources in addition to the DART program.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So listen,
we are, our hotline number is 24 hours. So any day, anytime you call, you'll get somebody.
Awesome. Thank you. Listeners, we want to share some more resources. And let me also say Happy New Year. Jen actually pointed out to me this is our first program of the year, so Happy New Year to everyone. So we have the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Their website is www.thehotline.org. Their phone number is 1-800-799-7233. We have Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, also known as RAIN. Their website is www.rainn.org. And we have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Their phone number is 1-800-273-8255. And listeners, I just want to reiterate again, I know there are so many of you around the globe. We are all in different places. But if you reach out where you live to your national number or national website to deal with domestic violence, you should be able to get resources. The national agency should be able to direct you to local agencies closer to where you are. So no matter where you live, do a Google search. Do whatever you need to do to get the information. Speak to a doctor, contact the police department, the fire department, in your doctor's office, wherever. But do your best to get the information that you need. Because again, there are so many countries around the globe. We cannot get everyone's information, but we want to let you know at least how to look for it where you are. And so with that, again, our topic on tonight, we're going to be talking about the DART program of Laurel House, and we're also going to be talking about the power and control wheel. So, Deidre, I'll just ask you if you would just let our listeners know, explain to our listeners what the DART program actually is.
So the DART program at Laurel House, we're based in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. DART stands for Domestic Abuse Response Team. Some of the things that we assist with is helping individuals obtain protection from abuse orders. There's an emergency order that you can get. We would accompany you to your local police station at any time to help you obtain that. It's only good for 24 hours. If you do file it on a Friday, it hangs over until that Monday morning, and then it will expire at 8 a.m. The next protection order that we assist with is the temporary order. That's generally good for 7 to 10 business days. We would go to the courthouse, help you file out all that paperwork, and then you would have to come back for a final order, which could be in Pennsylvania permanent for up to 3 years. It just depends on what the judge determines. Mm-hmm. Some of the other things we assist with is if there's a criminal case linked to any of the abuse that was suffered, we would go with you to that. We would explain the entire process to you. We offer emotional support over the phone. At Lower House, we do have other departments. We have an attorney that is pro bono that works with PFAs, custody, child support. We have our counseling department that is wonderful. We have our emergency shelter department also. We have a brand new shelter building that's beautiful. We also have a full pantry at our location where if you are in need of any groceries or household items, we can provide those things for you. If you need any gas cards or gift cards or anything like that, we can provide those things. Baby formula, stuff like that. Yeah, and that's the basis of what we do day to day.
That sounds like an awesome program. And so Laurel House is, if I'm not mistaken, it's located in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so if there's anyone, well, does Laurel House service individuals outside of Montgomery County, or do you have to live in that area?
So if you are fleeing from, let's say, Bucks County or Philadelphia County, absolutely you can get services from us in Montco. The same thing with our shelter department. If you are fleeing and you feel as though you'd be safer in Montgomery County, mm-hmm. That is also something that we would be able to accommodate for sure. The only thing where it gets tricky is with filing the protection orders. If you don't live in Montco, or if the incident did not happen in Montco, you can only file in the county that it happened or where you live in.
Okay. Well, again, the DART program just sounds awesome. And I know I have access to it myself with the DV team, outreach team at my church. We have this information. So if anyone walks in, we will be able to call Laurel House, to walk us through the situation and, help us to do whatever needs to be done. So the DART program is just, I believe it's vital. And it's just, I don't know what word I want to use. I mean, it's just great. And for me, especially to see a program like this, going through what I went through with my own story, not having what I needed. And now it's like, I can give this information, Laurel House, and some other agencies, like I have it at my hands. I can share this information. It's just so completely different, when I was going through. It was like I was feeling my way around in the dark. I didn't know what to do and where to go. And I think the programs that are offered here is just, it's amazing because it's like the DV agencies think of the things that would escape the victim or survivor's mind at the moment. Like when I was going through, I wasn't thinking about having to go to court, let alone somebody being able to go with me.
Yeah.
And then the paperwork and things like that. So this is just, I think this is great. It is awesome. Jen, did you have a question or comment, anything you wanted to throw in there?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for explaining what the DART program is, Deirdre. what, if any, do you have any involvement then with local police? Like, I know lethality assessment programs are a part of some domestic violence organizations, something that they help or aid police with. Does the DART program come into play at all with that, or with police in general as a response team?
Absolutely. So the majority of our referrals come from police departments. It's either a triggered LAP form, or they just responded out to a domestic, and they're just passing along our information. Also, the DART department does do police trainings where our supervisor goes out to different police stations in Montgomery County and just give them basic training on domestic violence and how to interact with survivors when they come in contact with them. And, trying to make that first contact a positive experience, trying to not re-traumatize survivors and things like that.
Yeah, that's great, because I know it's great for survivors and current victims to hear, because it can be really terrifying to reach out to somebody like the police, but knowing that they are involved with local organizations that are trauma informed does, I think, help ease that a little bit. There's definitely always more we can be doing, but I think that's such an important role that organizations play in the local police departments.
Definitely, I agree. Yeah, they're great. Having that, I think having the police trainings is very, very vital to the DART department, and having just different connections in different police departments, different officers that frequent us, and making sure that those individuals have access to our information.
Sure. And it goes both ways, right? I mean, that's not necessarily something that they would know outside of training directly from you guys, or another organization that's trauma informed specifically around interpersonal violence. So, it definitely is one of the more important, I think, partnerships that often gets overlooked, but it is such a vital partnership in communities. So thank you.
Thank you.
So, Deidre, how do you, or even can you, how do you measure success with the DART program? So you think about the police trainings, dealing with victims and survivors, and the all of the resources that you offer. Like, do you, or is there even a way to measure how successful this program has been?
It's interesting that you say that. We were having this conversation in our DART meeting last week, and it's kind of hard. Hard to measure success. We came to the conclusion that when we look at our yearly stats and even our monthly stats and see how many individuals we've helped get temporary PFAs, and how many individuals we've given pantry items to, and how many our call volume in general, I think we just measure success about how many people we're reaching out to, how are we getting our information out there. We recently put up a bunch of more signs in the Montgomery County Courthouse, and we've been getting a lot more call volume because of that. So things like that, just making sure that different departments are getting that information out to. We have a medical advocacy department that goes to the local hospitals and give them information as well. We have a partnership with Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and they also send us referrals. We are across from Mission Kids. They also send us referrals as well. So just building those connections within our community and just getting the information out there in every way possible.
And so, and another part of the DART program is that the DART team will come out immediately to where a victim or survivor is to assist in a situation.
Correct. We generally we go to police stations, hospitals. If you want to meet like at a coffee shop, wherever there is a safe location for us to meet and give you our information and talk through anything, things like that, there's someone that is available to come out 24/7 whenever needed.
Now, to me, that is amazing, because I've never heard of that resource being made available through a domestic violence agency. I know, for instance, through WARC, Women Organized Against Rape, they have individuals on call who will go to hospitals and meet victims where they are, and speak with them, help them, counsel them, and be with them. But Laurel House is the first domestic violence agency that I've known of that you can call and someone will come out. The team will come out to where you are and help you and assist you. I think that is just that is awesome. That is amazing. Jen, did you have a question or comment before I went on?
Yeah, actually, you had mentioned early when you were talking about what you guys do that you help apply for protection orders. And I'm sure Tia can relate as well, having had my own conversations with victims and survivors, it's really interesting how many people don't know what's available to them. Mm-hmm. Could you describe some of what's available as far as what a protection order is and what are the standards or parameters for that kind of thing?
Sure. So generally, there are the three types of protection orders, of course, the temporary, the emergency, and then the final order. Within that order, the judges generally look for a recent act of physical violence or a threat of violence. It's not limited to that. Within the order, it says you should not abuse, stalk, harass this individual. If you are living with the person, you can have them evicted through the protection order. The officers or the sheriff's office would serve them. They would have to leave immediately. If that order, the protection order is a civil order. However, if it is violated, then it becomes an ICC, which is a direct criminal complaint, meaning it is now criminal and you could face jail charges, fines, or penalties. And these are orders that can be granted up to 3 years. There's also a section within the order that asks, do you want custody of the children for the duration of the temporary order? Generally, custody is not touched in the final because that's something separate. They want them to go through the custody process. If you are a parent of a child and you and your child both have suffered the abuse, you can file the petition on behalf of yourself and your child. You can always file on behalf of just your child. Those are just a few of the parameters within the PFA, but it pretty much touches on everything that it can to keep the individual safe.
Yeah. They're so important, and but I think there's a lot of, which is why it's helpful to have legal help from and support from organizations, because it kind of is like gray for a lot of people of what the actual parameters are and what thresholds you have to meet, especially I think because when you talk about physical violence versus the threat of physical violence, a lot of times the law hasn't caught up to the reality. And so, everybody can see a bruise, but not everybody understands the threat of physical violence and how damaging that is. So, it's so crazy to me that it's so wide. The definition could be so wide. In your experience, have you found that people are more reluctant to come forward to apply for a PFA if it's not directly physical contact?
100%. It's very common. Us over at the DART department, we always tell them it doesn't hurt you to file. You may think that it's not going to get granted, but filing is the first step. It's a hard step. It won't hurt to file. If the order is denied, you have the option to have a final hearing where the person will still be served, or you can just not have a hearing at all and the person will never know that you filed. So we always encourage them that even if you feel that it may not be granted, it's 100% okay for you to take that step and just go for it anyway. And in my experience, it's very rarely that they're denied in general. So
that's an important distinction for people to know too. I didn't realize that the abuser would not be notified if the order is denied.
Yeah, so if they want to take it to a final hearing, the abuser will be notified, and then they'll have to come to the final hearing. But if they decide not to, they won't be notified at all.
That's great. Thank you.
So, Deidre, with all the services that are provided through the DART program, is there a limitation on the services, or is there a limit on like how many times a person can, a victim or survivor can come to Laurel House to get this help that they need?
No, there's no limitations. I've been in situations where I've only been working for Laurel House for a year and a half, and I've seen individuals, 3 months, we have them as a client, 3 months later we don't, 3 months later they're back as a client. So whenever they come back to us, they can still receive our services. We'll still be with them from the temporary process of filing the PFA all the way up until the conclusion of their criminal case if they do have one. So there's no limitations on our services.
Okay. And so before we move into the power and control wheel, Jen, I want to, ask you if you have another comment on this, but I want to ask you, Deidre, if you can share information for our listeners to be able to send in donations to Laurel House to help, like maybe with baby formula, diapers, finances. Is there a way for listeners to donate to Laurel House to help with the resources and programs that they offer?
Definitely. So I know, let me look at my business card now because our P.O. box is on there. So our P.O. box is 764 Norristown, PA 19404. And then we do take donations. You can come in, you'll sign a form. We'll take them. We take pretty much everything. I don't think there's anything we're currently not taking. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So, and just to name, like just because I know, like clothing, underwear, bed sheets, blankets, jackets, coats.
Yeah, clothing, toiletry items, food items. If you have any Kangas that you just want to get rid of that you're not using, we take gift cards. Anything that you have, we'll take it.
Okay, and for adults and children as well, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, Jen, did you have anything else on the actual DART program before we change gears a little?
No, but I'm going to follow up real quick. What is currently your biggest need? Do you have one?
That's a good question. I would say for our pantry, it's literally a little bit of everything because it's going out every single day. Yeah, so everything, honestly.
Great.
Awesome. So, listeners, we implore you to provide any assistance that you can to Laurel House, because this agency is just great. It really is. The information, the resources, the help that is provided. I mean, this goes a long way. Even for me, myself personally, I received assistance from DAP, the Domestic Abuse Project of Delaware County, and one of the biggest things that helped me was when I went to court. Someone went with me, and I totally did not expect that. I didn't, I was speaking to my counselor and, saying that I have to do A, B, C, and D. And she said, well, this is what we can do. And this is what we will do to help you and assist you. And she actually went to court with me. That is a huge thing. Just to have the physical support of another person who understands what you're about to go through and what you're in, to have the support of someone who will actually help you fill out paperwork. I remember times of filling out paperwork and I didn't even know what I was reading. I wasn't there. I wasn't mentally there. I wasn't emotionally there. So the support that agencies like Laurel House provides, it is absolutely needed, and it is definitely appreciated. And I just hats off to you guys, because this is a great program. It really is. So with that, we also wanted to cover the power and control wheel, because we talk about boundaries, and we talk about the power and control wheel a lot. So I want to ask Deidre, just from your point, from your perspective, and from your knowledge, can you share with our listeners what the power and control wheel is?
Yeah, so if I'm saying this correctly, I believe the power control wheel was developed in 1984, and or somewhere around that era. And what it was 3 individuals that were doing a study for survivors, and they came up with this diagram that basically shows the different tactics that abusers use to keep individuals inside that relationship. The outer will is when it talks about the physical violence and the sexual violence, and then the inner will is more of the emotional and the psychological abuse. People tend to only look at the outer at times as being abuse, and not so much the inner. And the wheel also gives you a view into the mind of an abuser in that situation and how some of the things they say and do are to keep that person around. Like, for example, there might be a situation where a survivor abuser comes home and he says, or he or she says, "I'm no longer doing dishes, this is your job." Someone who's not in an abusive relationship would feel like, okay, we're going to have a conversation. I feel 100% approaching you about why you're not going to do this. Whereas who is a survivor of domestic violence and that's currently in that situation may be in fear of how to approach that situation, knowing that, okay, even if I just want to have a conversation about this, I can, because this individual might begin to verbally abuse me or emotionally abuse me or even physically abuse me. So just those are just some of the things that the wheel shows us.
Yes, and I think it's very interesting that there are a lot of individuals who truly do not know or believe that they are in an abusive relationship until they look at the power and control wheel, until they see information written black and white in front of them to describe what they've been experiencing. Some people really don't know and understand. I'm in an abusive relationship, or I was in an abusive relationship, until they see the information in front of them. And listeners, so the power and control wheel in front of me that I have, I want to share the information on it. So as Deidre said, the very outside, we have physical violence and sexual violence. Inside the wheel, there's intimidation, there's emotional abuse, isolation, minimizing and denying and blaming. There's using children. The abusers will use children against their partners. There's economic abuse, male privilege, and coercion and threats. And as we look at the information, and then if you see some examples, and then you're able to say, well, that happened to me. Now I know what it is, or now I can explain it or put some words to it. So I've always thought that was very interesting, that individuals are not recognizing abuse until they see black and white words in front of them. I've always found that to be interesting. So, Jen, did you want to throw in anything about the power and control wheel?
Yeah, I'm one of those people. I knew, well, first of all, I didn't know that I was in an abusive relationship until somebody told me, which sounds bananas to somebody who has never been in that situation. But I had just been blaming myself for what was happening in my marriage and what I was experiencing until someone told me that what I was going through wasn't normal. And it kind of shifted something in my brain where I was able to take a step back and, give them some other examples. Well, what about this? And I didn't have like a litmus. It became like my baseline for normal. I didn't have one. I had never been married before. I figured, this is just, they tell you marriage is hard. It must just be hard. It shouldn't be that hard. Right. And so our first step, which this is a very big simplification of the process, but the first step was I felt like I needed to do everything I possibly could to quote unquote save my marriage. And so we ended up going to counseling together. And that wasn't working. And after months of just things getting worse at home and things starting to escalate, I started going to see our counselor by myself for individual counseling. And, you know, God was with me, because that normally that wouldn't happen. They wouldn't allow you to do the same individual counselor and a marriage counselor.
Mm-hmm.
But I think maybe she knew something was up. So we had our first session, and I started talking about what was wrong with me and what I needed to fix. And she pulled out the power and control wheel. It was the first time I'd ever seen it. And she said, "Does any of this resonate with you?" And I looked at it, and I just remember like my stomach dropping, because I could pick out more than half of the wheel. And so it was my first foot out the door. You know, it was that, seeing that in black and white was what really kind of gave me permission to say, this is real. I need to get out of here, because it's not getting better and it's actually getting worse.
Yes. Well, yes, Deidre.
Something that you actually said earlier that really resonated with me is that a lot of people don't understand that they suffered abuse until they look at the power of control with it.
Mm-hmm.
Understand that prior to even working at Laurel House, I didn't understand that some of the things that I had experienced in a past relationship were abuse. You know, I looked at it as if like, well, I was never in fear of this person.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like, you know, just went about it and didn't really think about it. And then I too like saw the power and control wheel, and I started to look at it, and I was like, okay, these things make sense. And then it really began to help me understand that abuse is just not one dimensional. There's so many different layers.
Yes. And I think it also helps other individuals. You may not be the one who is in an abusive relationship, and you may not be the abuser, but maybe if you're the friend or family member or coworker, I think it helps for all individuals to look at the power and control wheel and try to gain some understanding of what another person in your life may be going through. There was a woman who we know the kids show Muppets, Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog, and yeah, I grew up with them. I've always loved the Muppets. But there is a woman who is in an abusive relationship. Her husband did not touch her. He never touched her, but he would call her Miss Piggy, and he would do it in front of family and friends. He would do it anywhere, and he would do it the way that he said it. It sounded as if he was sweetly saying something to her, like, you know, like it was a cute nickname. And that's what everybody around them saw and perceived. They thought they have, you know, cute nicknames for each other, and that's just it. He was demeaning her. He was, you know, always talking about her weight and calling her fat. And so when he called her Miss Piggy, that wasn't cute. It wasn't an endearment. But no one knew that but her. And as the person opened up, it was hard for everyone else to understand, because they thought it was sweet. They thought it was cute, but it's not. And so I think when you're on the outside, if you take the time to look at the power and control wheel, if you take the time to try to understand that abuse is more than just physical, it is mental and emotional, I think you can be of better service to a friend or, you know, a family member or coworker or whomever, as opposed to just jumping in and saying, well, I don't see what's wrong. I don't see the problem. Or whatever hurt you, that wouldn't hurt me. You know, you can call me Miss Piggy. You can call me whatever. I don't care. Okay, but you say that to the wrong person, and that could be detrimental to them. And so I really think I do believe an onus is on us to learn and to know. I mean, domestic violence it's in our face. It just really is. And so I think we should have some understanding, and, you know, we need some foundation to be able to reach out, and not just to adults, but, you know, to our kids, and say, because our kids are dealing with this in high school, in middle school, and in college. So I think we need some information. So I encourage everyone, go to the national website, Call the hotlines, ask questions, get information. I mean, you can call, and I tell family members and friends, you can get services for yourself too. You can get counseling services as you're going through. I mean, it's very hurtful and hard to watch a family member or friend go through an abusive relationship. So you have to care for yourself as well. But we can't care for someone out of ignorance. It's not just enough to love me and want me to be better. You really need to know what you're saying before you say it. Because to tell someone, he called you Miss Piggy and it just sounded so sweet, you should just be okay with that. That's not good. That's emphasizing, re-emphasizing the hurt and the pain. So I think all that to say, we all should know what the power and control wheel is.
Yeah.
You know,
or even to say, you know, that's not right, but think that it was still a joke or still silly. And
right.
Deirdre, something that you alluded to earlier was that when you're talking about non-physical abuse, a lot of people don't understand because they're approaching it from a quote unquote normal relationship where you can have a conversation with somebody, you can have a conversation with your partner, because nobody's perfect, and we all know that we all mess up, right? But it's the way that your day-to-day life plays out. So if I'm in a healthy relationship, even if we're going through something that is not nice or not fun, we should still be able to talk and communicate, or at the very least express how we're feeling.
Yes.
A dysfunctional and toxic relationship exists when one partner holds clear power over the other and is completely unapproachable. You are afraid to do anything to upset them, whether it's because you fear physical violence or whether it's because they make your life miserable when you do. So you get caught in these cycles with that kind of behavior, and you start to learn that it becomes a pattern, and you start to learn how to behave. So I just think, you know, even if somebody heard that and was like, oh, that's not very nice, but normally he's a nice person, so he was probably just having an off day, or, you know, she's too sensitive about that nickname or whatever, is like, but you don't understand what it's like behind closed doors.
Yes.
You don't understand what it's like when we're alone. So you see this, and you are basing your opinion based on this one action. But he is not, or she is not, who that is behind closed doors.
Yes. So with that, listeners, I want to share some more resources before we go back to Deidre. We want to welcome you again to Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern, with a replay at 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, and also Thursdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern. And Luv Bay, we are continuing to rise out of the ashes together. The next resource that we have to share with you is Ontario Native Women's Association. Their website is www.onwa.ca. Their phone number is 1-800-667-0816. We have Befrienders Volunteer Action to Prevent Suicide. To find a helpline by country, you can visit their website, www.befrienders.org. And then we have Canadian Women's Foundation. Their website is canadianwomen.org. Their phone number is 1-866-293-4483. So, Deidre, I wanted to ask you, in addition to any other thoughts that you have on a power and control wheel, I wanted to ask, can you speak to men being affected by the power and control wheel as well? Because we're still dealing with the issue of people understanding that men can be and are abused as well. And there are a lot of men who also do not know that they are being abused until they see it in front of their faces in black and white.
Yeah, I think that it's very important for people to know that the dynamics can go both ways. You both hit on that financial abuse it's a form of abuse. It's a really big form of abuse, especially in different cultures. We see it a lot. It's a really big form of abuse, and people think that, there's a such thing as a stay-at-home dad. There could be a man who's a stay-at-home dad and his wife is going out and she's making all the money, and then there's a financial abuse aspect. So it 100% goes both ways. Personally, I've seen that in my experience that verbal and emotional abuse is very big, and the men that I've come in contact with, they don't really understand it as being abused in the beginning, and then they go through their counseling sessions and we go over the will with them and things like that, and then they begin to understand it. Of course, they're extremely reluctant to reach out and get resources from the beginning. So it's a tough space to be in. I feel like it's something that is progress every day, because people just don't understand that gender abuse has no gender.
Yes.
It literally happened to anyone. And I think also oftentimes people just label domestic violence as being between two people who are in an intimate partnership, when in reality your abuser could be your mother, your abuser could be your father, your abuser could be your child. So domestic violence is literally the people in your family, in your household. And the power and control world even looks different with those dynamics. It looks different when mom's the abuser, or when dad's the abuser, or even in some cases we've gotten children who are their parents' abuser. We've gotten like 15, 16-year-old kids, people are calling their 15-year-old is abusing them. And what do I do? Because do I go get a protection order? Judges are often reluctant to sign evictions for kids, because where do they go? It's very interesting when you look at the different dynamics and the different relationships that come with it.
So when you have clients come in to Laurel House, is the power and control wheel one of the first, resources that would be presented to a client?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that we go over. We go over our program first, and we go off to, do you need counseling? Do you need any legal? The power and control wheel. There's something else we have called a chats tool, which is going through the line, seeing if any strangulation or any head trauma has been suffered, trying to get them connected to medical professionals, get those CTA scans and stuff like that, to make sure there's no long-term effects from the abuse.
And I want to say, I hope this comes out the right way. I want to say that there are times when information may be in front of your face and the victim or survivor doesn't want to accept the truth, or is not ready to accept the truth. So it may take a few sessions or a few conversations just to, break down your defenses, like to get you to get a client to trust, to get a victim or a survivor to that place where you can have this conversation, you can see this resource in front of you and begin to accept, this is the truth, this is my situation, and for them to come to a point where they're not making excuses anymore. So for instance, this was not a bad argument, he just didn't have a temper on that day. No, this is actually abuse. So if I don't have a broken bone, it still is not okay for him or her to be grabbing me, pulling my hair, or pushing me, or shoving me. I think sometimes it takes a moment for a person to stop trying to rationalize in their mind, what is happening. So does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking as you're talking, we are so We've been so desensitized to violence because we have access to it all of the time, and not just in entertainment, but in the news. We've been desensitized to violence so much, and I think that we are constantly thinking that it's not as bad as we think it is, just because of we know that it could be worse, which isn't a metric to judge by. And then the other thing is we have a really hard time setting boundaries. Most people don't know how to set boundaries. If you've never been taught, which a lot of people aren't growing up because their parents weren't taught growing up. So you have this desensitization to violence and a lack of boundaries. And I think it's just such a recipe for disaster. So even when you're presented with information that could possibly help you or save your life, I think we're still inclined on some level to be like, but is it as bad as I think it is? Is it this bad? And then throw in for fun the trauma of being in a relationship like this. So it's all kind of the perfect storm and leads to disaster. And I think it's one of the reasons why it's domestic violence is as lethal as it is.
Yes.
It is, sometimes it has been too late, because it is just too difficult to pull away. And we know we've been there. We've been in it. Like, yes, we did, we're fortunate, but gosh, it could have just as easily gone the other way.
So Deidre, I want to ask you, so in your experience being in Laurel House, the time that you've been there, and then also, as you said, the information that you received that just shed some light on a past relationship that you had, how has your experience and your time at Laurel House, how does that help you deal with the victims and survivors that come in the door?
I think first off, from like my own personal experience, it helps me to see signs quicker, not even just at Laurel House, but within my friendships, within people that I talk to daily. And I don't know, I feel like sometimes like it's kind of bad because when I'm around my friends, I'm like, say that again, and they're like, I'm just wondering. I'm like, I'm not gonna say. I don't know. That was interesting. But yeah, like I know, like I feel like sometimes they're like, don't do that. And I'm like, I don't know, help here. But yeah, like everything to me is like a red flag, a sign. I try to sit back and listen and observe and just help everyone in every way possible. And I think my own personal experience, because working at Laurel House sheds so much light on that, things that before I worked at Laurel House that I didn't really see as being abuse, essentially. It helps me now understand that that's 100% abuse. And as we all know, that it could start off as just like emotionally tearing someone down.
Yes.
You can mentally tear them down. And then subsequently, unfortunately, it could lead to being physical. So I think that oftentimes when I encounter these clients where they're like, well, this person's never hit me, but this happens. And I'm like, well, that in itself is abuse. Yes. And because this is occurring, you never want it to continue to escalate to something that could be physical.
Yes. So for our listeners, and our listeners are tuned in from around the globe, any of our listeners who may be dealing with an issue of domestic violence, what would you say to someone listening right now who doesn't know which way to go or what to do? Like how can you encourage our listeners on tonight?
I would say first that you're not alone. In the first aspect of, there are so many people around the world who have dealt with this and are currently dealing with it. Second, you're not alone, because organizations like Laurel House and Women Against Abuse and all around the country, these organizations exist for us to help you in every way possible. Not be ready right now to go the step of getting a protection order, but counseling is available. You know, maybe it's easier for you to talk about it first and then move to the next step. This first accepting that you're in a situation of domestic violence is the first step. Standing like, okay, this is abuse. If you feel as though you are in a situation where someone is abusing you, I always tell people, you know, Google domestic violence, you know, look at all of the different things. Google the power and control wheel, you know. Again, just because someone isn't physically harming you, they shouldn't be calling you names and then saying like, oh, I was just joking, you know, things like that. Or withholding finances from you. No one should tell you that I'm only going to give you $15 for the entire month. Just things like that.
Jen, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I guess, no, it's just important to know that, like you said, Deirdre, you're not alone for so many reasons. And there are resources in this country, but around the world as well. So many have been through this and are there to help and to be a part of the solution. You don't have to stay. It's not the end. And there is a better life and happiness to be found outside of the relationship that you're currently stuck in. And you are not the first person to feel stuck. And I think what keeps running through my head is, if you're getting to the point where you're asking yourself, is it really this bad? It's gone too far already. Yes. It's already that bad. You know, it is as bad as you think it is. It's actually probably worse.
Yes. And I wanted to emphasize too that there are different versions of the power and control wheel. For instance, you can apply the power and control wheel to same-sex relationships, to the LGBTQ community. You know, so for instance, if you have someone that you're with your partner, maybe if one of you is out to family and friends and the other isn't, if that person threatens to tell your family and friends about your sexual orientation, that's abuse. That's not okay. And of course, physical abuse, emotional abuse, all of that can happen within a same-sex relationship. So it does not change because of your sexual orientation, because of your race or gender, because of your religion. Abuse is abuse. So the power and control wheel can be applied to any relationship, any dynamic. Even as Deidre was saying earlier, domestic violence is domestic violence in the entire family. It could be domestic violence at work. You could be dealing with a boss who's being abusive towards you. It could be coworkers. It could be in school. So it can be applied to different instances, different relationships. And so I just wanted to throw that in there, because there are individuals that I know who feel like, well, specific groups can't be abused because of X, Y, and Z. Well, that is absolutely not true. It's not. And so I wanted to emphasize that. But as we are just under the hour, we have had, I believe, a very good conversation with Deidre. And Deidre will be back with us. She will be back with us to speak again. I'm hoping several times.
Whenever you need me, I'm here.
Yes. So with that, Jen and Deidre, if you would just give your final comments to our listeners on tonight, what you would want to leave them with. Jen, I would ask if you would go first, and then Deidre, you can say goodnight to our listeners and whatever final words you want to leave.
Yeah, I feel like we're all repeating ourselves, and sometimes I feel like that week after week here, because we do often touch on the same themes, obviously. Mm-hmm. But if I've learned anything through doing advocacy, it's that it bears repeating, because people need to know that you mean it, that you're still there, and validation is something that takes time and is needed over and over again. So I'm just going to repeat what we've all already been saying, which is that you're not alone. You deserve better, and you can get out.
Thank you. Deidre?
And I would just 100% agree with Jennifer that you are not alone. You deserve better. And there is different organizations out here to help you. It's a scary process. It's a big step. Slow and steady, taking slow steps. Everyone's situation is different, but don't feel helpless. All of these organizations are here to help you in any way possible. Whether it's helping you just get some food and clothing and diapers and stuff like that for your children, or it's helping you get connected to counseling, or it's helping you take that step in filing that protection order. All of these things are here to help you, and utilize those resources. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but when you feel ready, you'll know you're ready, and those resources will always be there.
Deidre, thank you so much. Thank you for being
Thank you
with
for
us.
having me.
And I look forward to you coming back many more times. Luv Bay, if you want to catch up on previous episodes from the program, you can visit our YouTube channel, Suffering in Silence DV. And as usual, Jen, we thank you for being here also. We thank you for joining us, Luv Bay, for Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Luv Bay, remember, we are rising out of the ashes together. Good evening.